The alarm bells rang through the Valari research station like a song of crystal wind chimes. Commander Talneth moved quickly through the bright white halls, her long fingers dancing over the control panels. Her people were beautiful beings, tall and thin like living glass sculptures. They had ruled this part of space for 300 years with wisdom and gentle ways. "Commander," called her assistant Meldon, "we have a distress signal from Kara 7. Talneth stopped. Kara 7 was a mining colony 3 systems away. Good people lived there, families, children. Her heart felt heavy as she read the message on the screen. "Help us. Colony under attack, unknown enemy ships, many dead. Please hurry." The message repeated, over and over. Each time it played, Talneth felt worse. Her people had always been protectors. They used their advanced technology to keep peace in the galaxy. Their weapons did not kill. They only made attackers sleep. Their shields could stop any energy beam. They were the ones others called when trouble came. "Ready the rescue ship," she told Meldon. "Send our fastest vessel, the Gentle Current." "Yes, Commander. Captain Sullivan is already preparing his crew." Talneth nodded. Sullivan was good. He had saved colonies before. His ship was filled with medical supplies, food, and peaceful weapons that would stop any fight without hurting anyone. The Valari way had always worked. Far away in the cold black of space near the edge of human territory, Captain Jiwan sat in her command chair aboard the UES Hammer of Soul. She was drinking coffee that could probably melt metal and reading reports from her crew. Her ship was not pretty like the Valari vessels. It was built like a weapon, all sharp edges and dark metal. Gun ports covered every surface. The humans who built it never forgot that space wanted to kill them. "Captain," her communications officer Kyung-soo called out, "I'm picking up a distress signal." Jiwan set down her coffee. "Put it through." The same message that reached the Valari now filled the human bridge. But where the Valari heard a call for peaceful rescue, the humans heard something different. They heard the sound of predators hunting prey. "Source?" Jiwan asked. "Kara 7. Mining colony. Mixed population. About 2,000 people." Jiwan stood up. She was not tall, but everyone on the bridge knew she was dangerous. Her people had crawled out of a gravity well that tried to crush them every day. They had learned to fight everything, their own planet, each other, and now the galaxy itself. "Minho," she called to her chief engineer. "How long to get there?" 4 hours if we push the engines hard, Captain." "Do it. Hyejin, prep all weapons. Dayun, set up medical bay for wounded." This doesn't sound like a rescue mission. Her crew moved fast. They had done this before. Humans were new to space, but they learned quick. Other species had millions of years to become civilized. Humans had a few hundred years to become very good at not dying. The Gentle Current reached Kara 7 first. Captain Sullivan and his crew of 20 Valari looked at their screens with growing horror. The colony was burning. Strange black ships surrounded the planet like angry wasps around a hive. "Krex," whispered Sullivan. Everyone on the bridge went quiet. The Krex were nightmare creatures from the dark parts of space. They looked like giant insects crossed with machines. They did not talk or trade. They only took. They took people, technology, entire worlds. They turned captured beings into slaves and worked them until they died. "Send a message to the attacking ships," Sullivan ordered. "Tell them we are here to help the wounded. We mean no harm." The answer came as weapons fire. Bright. Red beams hit the Valari shields. The energy crackled and held, but Sullivan could see his shield power dropping fast. "They are not listening," his weapons officer said. "Fire the sleep beams. Set them to widespread. Maybe we can make them stop fighting." The Valari ship fired its peaceful weapons. Beautiful blue light washed over the Krex vessels. For a moment, Sullivan thought it worked. Then the enemy ships fired again, harder this time. "Captain, the sleep beams do nothing. Their minds are protected somehow." Sullivan felt fear creep into his heart. His people had always been able to stop violence with their technology. They could make any being fall asleep. They could shield against any weapon. But the Krex were different. They were ready for the Valari way of fighting. More Krex ships came from behind the planet. They moved fast and shot accurate. Sulven watched his shields fail one by one. His ship shook as enemy fire hit the hull. "Send distress call," he ordered. "All channels, emergency frequency." "Message sent, Captain. But who will answer?" "We are the ones who usually come to help." Sulven did not answer. He was too busy trying to keep his ship alive. The Krex were not trying to destroy them quickly. They were playing with them like cats with mice. They wanted the Valari alive. Slaves were more valuable than corpses. One by one, his crew began to fall asleep. Not from their own weapons, but from Krex neural disruptors. The insect beings had studied their enemies well. They knew how to turn Valari technology against them. As Sulven felt his own mind growing dark, he managed to send one last message. "Any ship, any species. Colony Keras 7 needs help. We cannot do this alone. Please, if anyone hears this, we hope civilized beings will come. People who can find peaceful solutions. People who understand the value of life." The message went out across space, carried by radio waves and quantum transmitters. It reached the Valari home system, where leaders gathered in emergency session to plan diplomatic responses. It reached the trading posts of the Zenthari, who began calculating the economic impact of another lost colony. And it reached Captain Jiwan, who was already 2 hours into her jump toward Keras 7. She listened to Sulven's message with her crew, around her. When it finished, her bridge was quiet for a moment. "Civilized beings," repeated Hyejin. "People who understand the value of life." "Well," said Jiwan, checking her weapons display, "they're going to get humans instead." Her crew began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. They knew what was coming. The Valari hoped for rescue from civilized people who would talk and negotiate and find peaceful solutions. But the Deathworlders were bringing fire. The hammer of Soul dropped toward Keras 7 like a falling hammer, and Captain Jiwan began to plan what humans called aggressive diplomacy. Space around Keras 7 bent and twisted as the hammer of Soul dropped out of hyperspace. The ship appeared like a predator stepping out of shadow, all dark metal and weapon ports. Where Valari vessels looked like art made of light and crystal, the human ship looked like it was built to survive the end of the world. Captain Jiwan stood on her bridge, watching the battle display. Her brown eyes took in everything at once: the burning colony below, the Krex warships patrolling like metal, vultures, the gentle current floating dead in space, its crew unconscious from neural disruptors. "Status report," she said in a calm voice. 12 Krex vessels," reported Hyejin from weapons. 6 heavy cruisers, 6 patrol ships. They have the colony surrounded and are loading prisoners into transport ships. "Krex battle doctrine," added Minho from engineering. "They're harvesting slaves, not trying to destroy everything. Makes them predictable." Jiwan nodded. Humans had studied the Krex for years. When you lived on a planet that tried to kill you every day, you learned to study everything that might be dangerous. And in space, everything was dangerous. "Daeun, what about casualties down there?" "Reading lots of life signs in the main colony buildings," the medic replied. "They're keeping people alive, for now." On the main Krex command ship, War Master Skekth clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The soft Valari had been easy prey, just as predicted. Their stunning weapons and energy shields were useless against Krex neural dampeners and adaptive armor. Soon they would have 2,000 new slaves and valuable Valari technology. His communications officer buzzed. "War Master, new ship detected, unknown class." Skeketh turned his compound eyes toward the tactical display. The new ship was smaller than his command vessel, but built very differently. It looked angry. "Identify," he commanded. "Unknown, War Master. Ship design not in database. Sending standard challenge." The challenge went out in the common trade language used across the galaxy. "State your business. Submit to inspection. Surrender any advanced technology." The answer came back in accented but clear trade speak. "This is Captain Jiwan of the United Earth ship Hammer of Soul. You have 30 seconds to release all prisoners and withdraw from this system before we Demonstrate why humans don't negotiate with slavers. Skekth made a sound like grinding metal. He had never heard of these humans before. Another soft species, probably. Another group of civilized beings who would try to solve everything with words and peaceful technology. Destroy them, he ordered. The Krek ships turned toward the human vessel. Energy weapons charged. Boarding pods prepared. This would be quick. Then the Hammer of Soul opened fire. The first thing that confused the Kreks was that human weapons were not energy beams. Instead of bright-colored light, the humans fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speed. The railgun rounds hit Krek shields designed to deflect energy and went straight through them like they were made of paper. "Shields down on Battlecruiser 3, reported Hyejin, watching her targeting display. "Direct hit on their engine section." "Good shooting," said Jiwan. "Minho, show them what we learned from mining asteroids." Minho grinned and launched a spread of mining charges. To most species, these were simple tools for breaking up rocks, but humans had learned to use them as weapons. The charges created tiny gravity wells that grabbed onto enemy ships and crushed them from the inside. 2 Kreks patrol. Vessels simply crumpled like empty cans. War Master Skekth watched his tactical display with growing alarm. These humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. They used industrial equipment as weapons. Their ship moved like it was built for war, not exploration. "Return fire. All weapons." Red energy beams lanced out from the remaining Kreks ships. They hit the human vessel and did almost nothing. The Hammer of Soul's hull was covered in reactive armor that absorbed energy weapons and scattered kinetic impacts. "Hull temperature rising to optimal combat range," reported Minho cheerfully. "All systems green." "Optimal?" asked Jiwan. "Human ships work better when they're getting shot at, Captain. Better heat distribution for the weapons systems." Jiwan shook her head. Sometimes she forgot how crazy her species looked to outsiders. They built ships that got stronger under fire and used mining equipment to fight wars. On the gentle current, Captain Sullivan woke up as his emergency systems restarted. His head felt like someone had hit it with a hammer, but he was alive. Around him, his crew was also waking up. "Report," he managed to say. "Unknown vessel engaging the Kreks, Captain. They appear to be winning." Sullivan looked at his display screen and could not believe what he saw. The graceful Kreks formation was breaking apart. Ships were exploding or drifting dead. And in the middle of it all, one dark ship moved like a dancer, never staying still, always firing. "Who are they?" he whispered. "They call themselves humans, Captain. From a planet called Earth." Sullivan had never heard of either, but he watched in amazement as these humans did what his own people could not. They were not trying to stun the enemy or negotiate. They were not using non-lethal weapons or energy shields. They were destroying the Kreks with cold, efficient violence. "Boarding. Action," announced Captain Jiwan, watching her tactical display. "Taehyun, take your Marines down to the colony. Clean out any Kreks ground forces." "Yes, Captain. How many prisoners do you want?" "None from the slavers, but save any colonists you can." Lieutenant Taehyun and his squad of 20 Marines launched toward the planet in armored drop pods. The Kreks tried to shoot them down with surface-to-air weapons. The humans simply ignored the incoming fire and crashed into the colony like falling meteors. Taehyun stood up in the smoking crater his pod had made and looked around. The colony was a mess of burning buildings and scared people. Krek soldiers, in their black insect armor, were everywhere, herding prisoners toward transport ships. "Spread out," he told his squad. "Standard pest control protocol." The Marines moved through the colony like ghosts. They used suppressed weapons that made almost no sound. They coordinated through radio signals that the Kreks could not intercept. They treated the enemy soldiers like a problem to be solved, not opponents to fight fair against. One by one, Krek squads simply disappeared. Back in space, War Master Skekth realized he was losing badly. Of his 12 ships, only 4 remained, functional. The human vessel had barely been scratched. "Send surrender signal," he ordered. "The humans are not responding to surrender signals, War Master." "What do you mean?" "They appear to be continuing the attack. Skekth felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. Fear. These humans did not fight like civilized beings. They did not accept surrender. They did not try to capture enemies for interrogation. They just kept shooting until everything stopped moving. Fall back. All remaining ships, retreat to hyperspace. But the humans had learned from studying Craig's tactics. They knew the enemy would try to run. G1 had positioned her ship between the Creks and their escape route. Hyejin, target their engines, make sure they can't jump away. Already on it, Captain. More railgun rounds found their targets. The last Creks cruiser lost its hyperspace drive in a shower of sparks and began drifting helplessly. Down on the colony, Taehyun found a group of terrified families hiding in a basement. Men, women, and children from 3 different species all clutching each other in fear. "It's okay," he told them in the trade language. "We're here to help." An older man looked at him with wide eyes. Are you the ones fighting up there?" "Yes, we're humans, Earth military. We hoped the Valari would save us. Or maybe the Zenthari would negotiate our freedom." Taehyun checked his weapon and prepared to move to the next building. "Sorry, you got us instead." The man looked confused. But you're saving us." "That's what we do," Taehyun said, and moved on to find more survivors. In space, Captain Ji-won opened a communication channel to the disabled Kreks command ship. "War Master Skekth," she said, somehow knowing his name. "This is Captain Ji-won. You have exactly 1 minute to evacuate all your people to life pods before I turn your ship into scrap metal." You cannot. We surrender. Galactic law requires you to accept surrender. Human law requires me to make sure slavers can't hurt anyone else. Your minute just became 30 seconds. Skekth looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. These humans did not follow the civilized rules of war. They were something new and terrible. "Abandon ship," he ordered. "All hands to escape pods." The Kreks began evacuating their vessels. As they did, they sent emergency messages across their communication network. Messages about a new species. A species that did not negotiate with slavers. A species that fought with industrial weapons and treated space combat like a technical problem to solve. Captain Ji-won watched the enemy life pods drift away from their ships, then ordered the final destruction of the Kreks vessels. Her weapons, officer fired precisely, turning 12 warships into expanding clouds of metal debris. "Colony secured," came Taehyun's voice from the planet. "All Kreks ground forces eliminated. We have about 1,500 survivors. Good work. Daeun, prepare medical teams. Sulven, are you receiving this?" The Valari captain's voice came through, shaky but alive. Yes, Captain Ji-won. We are. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This was just the easy part." Sulven looked at his display, showing the wreckage of an entire Kreks battle group destroyed in less. The battle was not really a battle at all. It was more like watching an expert solve a puzzle that happened to explode when you got the answer right. Captain Ji-won stood on her bridge, hands behind her back, watching the tactical display. Her ship moved through space like a shark through water, turning and diving between the scattered remains of Kreks vessels. Each movement was planned. Each shot was calculated. This was not warfare as most species understood it. This was applied physics with a side order of creative destruction. "Hyejin, target the communications array on that drifting cruiser. We don't want them calling for backup." "Already locked on, Captain." Hyejin's fingers moved over her weapons console like a pianist playing a familiar song. The railgun fired once and the Kreks communication system disappeared in a flash of sparks and twisted metal. "Minho, what's our power situation?" "Running at 60% capacity, Captain. Plenty left in reserve. Want me to try something interesting?" "With their gravity drives?" Ji-won raised an eyebrow. "Define interesting." Minho grinned. His specialty was taking equipment designed for one purpose and making it do something completely different, usually something that made enemies very unhappy. "Well, those Krek ships use artificial gravity to keep their crews comfortable. I can reverse the polarity on our mining charges and turn their own gravity systems against them." Do it. Down on the colony, Lieutenant Taehyun moved through the settlement with his Marines, checking buildings one by one. They had found most of the survivors, but Krek's soldiers were still hiding in some structures. His squad worked with the kind of teamwork that came from training together on a world where everything tried to kill you. Building 7 clear, reported Sergeant Yoonji over the radio. Found 12 more colonists in the basement, scared but alive. Copy that. Move to Building 9. Corporal Jaehoon, what's your status? Found a Krek squad trying to set up a defensive position near the landing pads. They're not trying anymore. Taehyun nodded. His people spoke in simple words, but those words carried a lot of meaning. When a human soldier said enemy forces were not trying anymore, it usually meant the problem had been solved permanently. Back in space, Captain Sullivan of the Gentle Current watched the human ship work with growing amazement. His own people had trained for centuries in peaceful conflict resolution. They studied diplomacy and negotiation. They built weapons that put enemies to sleep instead of killing them. But these humans fought like engineers solving a mechanical problem. They calculated angles and velocities. They used physics and chemistry. They turned industrial equipment into weapons and treated vacuum exposure like a minor inconvenience. Captain, his communications officer called. The humans are asking if we need medical assistance. Sullivan looked at his crew. Most of them were awake now, though still shaky from the neural disruptors. Tell them, yes, and ask if they can explain what they just did. The answer came from Captain Jiwon herself. This is standard human response doctrine, Captain Sullivan. When someone threatens civilians, we remove the threat. Simple. Simple? Sullivan looked at the wreckage around them. You destroyed an entire battle group in less than an hour. Krek's battle doctrine is predictable once you understand their psychology. They're hunters who expect prey animals. They weren't ready for other predators. Sullivan felt a chill. These humans talked about warfare the way his people talked about mathematics. Cold, logical, efficient. On the human bridge, Medic Daeun was already coordinating with the colony's medical facilities. She worked fast, setting up triage stations and preparing medical supplies. But she also kept one eye on the tactical display and one hand near her sidearm. Human medical training included combat surgery and the assumption that you might need to treat patients while under enemy fire. Captain, she reported. Colony Medical says they have about 200 wounded, mix of species, mostly plasma burns and neural damage from Krek's weapons. I can handle it, but I'll need to set up a temporary hospital in the main colony building. Take whatever you need. Minho, prep a medical shuttle. Already loaded, Captain. Want me to add some defensive upgrades? Just in case? Jiwon looked at him. Defensive upgrades to a medical shuttle? Shield generators, reactive armor, maybe a small weapons pod, standard human medical equipment. Sullivan listened to this conversation with growing disbelief. These humans put weapons on their hospital ships. They treated violence as a technical discipline. They planned military operations the way his people planned dinner parties. The ship's AI, voiced by Soman, added her cheerful commentary. Captain, I've completed analysis of Krek's tactical patterns. Shall I calculate optimal fear-inducing target prioritization for future encounters? What does that mean? Asked Sullivan. Our AI studies enemy psychology, explained Jiwon. She figures out what scares them most effectively. Turns out most species don't like it when you use their own technology against them. To demonstrate, Minho activated his gravity weapon. The mining charges he had attached to Krek's ship hulls suddenly reversed their artificial gravity fields. The remaining Krek's crew members found themselves pressed against the ceiling of their own ships by forces their own engines generated. As you can see, said Soman in her pleasant voice, the Kreks are now experiencing approximately 3 times normal gravity in the wrong direction. This should discourage further aggressive behavior while keeping them alive for questioning. Sullivan stared at the display showing Krek's soldiers stuck to the roofs of their own ships, unable to move. You turned their own gravity against them? Standard mining technique, explained Minho. We use gravity manipulation to move asteroids around. Same principle, different application. But that's horrible. It's non-lethal, pointed out Hyejin. We could have just blown them up. Sulven began to understand something frightening about these humans. They had multiple ways to solve every problem, and they chose their methods based on efficiency, not ethics. Down on the colony, Taehyun's Marines had finished clearing the settlement. They found the colony administrator, a nervous Zenthari named Peltok, hiding in his office. "Thank the spirits you came," Peltok said, shaking all over. "We sent the distress signal, but we hoped the Valari would send negotiators, or maybe the Federation would arrange a prisoner exchange." Taehyun looked at him with the kind of expression humans wore when someone said something very naive. "Did you want us to leave and let someone else handle this?" No, of course not. It's just, we expected a rescue mission, not a military operation. This was a rescue mission. We rescued you. But you killed all the Krek soldiers. They were threatening civilians. That's what we do to people who threaten civilians." Peltok stared at the young human soldier. "All of them? There were over 100 Krek troops here." "There were," agreed Taehyun. "Now there aren't." The simple way the human stated this fact made Peltok's blood run cold. These creatures from Earth did not see any moral complexity in the situation. Enemies had threatened innocent people. The enemies were eliminated. Problem solved. Back in space, Captain Ji-won was already thinking 3 steps ahead. "Someone send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we've encountered Krek slaving operations this far into civilized space. They'll want to know about this." "Message sent, Captain. Also, I'm detecting hyperspace signatures approaching from the edge of the system. 3 vessels, configuration unknown." Sullivan checked his own sensors. "Those are Valari ships, reinforcements from our home system." The 3 graceful Valari vessels dropped out of hyperspace and approached cautiously. Their leaders had expected to find a diplomatic crisis that required careful negotiation and peaceful resolution. Instead, they found debris fields and a single human ship, calmly salvaging useful technology from the wreckage. "This is Admiral Kelneth of the Valari Defense Force," came a transmission. "We are here to provide humanitarian assistance and negotiate the release of hostages." Captain Ji-won's reply was characteristically direct. "Hostages already released, Admiral. Colony is secure. Medical teams are treating the wounded. No negotiation required." What happened to the Krek's forces? "They are no longer a threat to civilian populations." Admiral Kelneth looked at his tactical display, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Captain Ji-won, our sensors show the remains of 12 Krek's warships. Did you destroy an entire battle group by yourself?" Standard human response. "Protocol, Admiral. When someone threatens non-combatants, we eliminate the threat. Then we make sure it doesn't happen again." "How do you make sure it doesn't happen again?" "We send a message that other Krek's forces will understand." As if on cue, Minho activated his communication array. He had been working on something while the others talked. Now he broadcast on all Krek's military frequencies a detailed tactical analysis of their defeat, complete with industrial music that human psychology studies suggested promoted aggressive behavior in listeners. The message was clear in any language. "This is what happens when you threaten human-protected civilians. This is how easily we destroyed you. This is why you should find somewhere else to hunt." Admiral Kelneth listened to the broadcast with growing amazement. "This is psychological warfare. This is preventive diplomacy," corrected Ji-won. "Much more efficient than sending negotiators every time someone takes hostages." The true scope of what the humans had done became clear only after the shooting stopped. Admiral Kelneth brought his 3 Valari ships closer to the Hammer of Soul, trying to understand what he was looking at. The debris field around Keras 7 told a story that made no sense to his civilized mind. 12 Krek's warships reduced to scrap metal, a battle group that should have been impossible for one ship to defeat, destroyed in less than an hour. "Captain Ji-won," he transmitted. "May I ask how many casualties your ship sustained in this engagement?" The reply came back in that same calm, matter-of-fact tone that seemed to be standard for humans. "0 killed, 3 minor injuries from equipment handling." Corporal Jehoon scraped his knuckles on a doorframe during boarding operations. Kelneth looked at his tactical officer, who looked back with the same expression of disbelief. 0 casualties, he repeated slowly. Correct, Admiral. Did you expect more? Yes. Krek's battle doctrine calls for taking heavy casualties even in victory. How did you avoid losses? There was a pause on the human channel, as if Captain Jiwan was trying to explain something very basic to someone who wasn't quite getting. We didn't fight them, Admiral. We solved them. Down on Kara 7, the difference between fighting and solving was becoming clear to the rescued colonists. Lieutenant Taehyun and his Marines moved through the settlement with the efficiency of people who had turned violence into a science. Sergeant Yunji called in from the colony's main square. Lieutenant, we've secured all the Krek's equipment, weapons, communication gear, battle armor. What do you want done with it? Standard procedure. Useful tech goes to analysis. Dangerous stuff gets destroyed. Personal effects get returned to next of kin. Personal effects? Asked Colony Administrator Peltok, who was following Taehyun around like a lost puppy. They were trying to enslave us all. Taehyun looked at him with that patient expression humans got when dealing with people who didn't understand military thinking. They were soldiers following orders. Bad orders from bad leaders, but still soldiers. We don't take anger out on dead people. This confused Peltok even more. The humans had killed every Krex trooper in the colony without hesitation, but now they were treating the bodies with respect and making sure personal items got sent back to families. I don't understand. Your people, he admitted. Most species don't, said Corporal Jehoon, who was checking his scraped knuckles. We're very good at violence, but we don't enjoy it. Big difference. Back in space, the conversation between the human and Valari commanders continued. Admiral Kelneth was trying to understand how one ship had accomplished what should have required a full battle fleet. Your weapons, he said. They're not energy-based. Mostly kinetic, agreed Captain Jiwan. Railguns, mining charges, some plasma torpedoes for special targets. Energy weapons work fine, but solid projectiles are harder to defend against. And your tactics? Standard human approach. Study the enemy, find their weaknesses, exploit them. Efficiently, the Krex expected to fight other civilized species with predictable weapons and defensive strategies. But you're not civilized? The question came out before Kelneth could stop himself. There was another pause on the human channel. This one felt dangerous. Define civilized, Admiral. Kelneth realized he had made a mistake. I meant, most species approach conflict resolution through negotiation and nonviolent means. Most species haven't spent their entire history fighting. For survival on a death world, replied Jiwan. We learned different lessons. On the gentle current, Captain Sullivan was listening to this conversation while his crew worked to repair their damaged systems. He was beginning to understand something important about these humans. They weren't brutal or savage. They were just extremely good at something most species tried very hard to avoid. His communications officer looked up from her console. Captain, I'm getting reports from across the sector. The message the humans sent on Krex frequencies is being received by their fleets everywhere. What kind of reports? Krex raiding operations are stopping, sir. Their ships are withdrawing from 3 different systems. The psychological impact appears to be significant. Sulven nodded slowly. Captain Jiwan had called it preventive diplomacy. Scare the Krex badly enough, and they would avoid human-protected space without needing to fight each battle individually. Efficient, he murmured. Down in the colony, Medic Dayan had set up her temporary hospital in the main community center. She moved between patients with the kind of calm competence that made everyone feel safer. Plasma burns, neural damage, broken bones from people trying to hide from the Krex. She treated everything with equal skill. But the colonists noticed other things about her. The way she positioned herself so she could see all the entrances to the building. The medical kit that included not just healing supplies but weapons and tactical equipment. The calm way she discussed treatment plans while monitoring radio chatter from the ongoing security sweep. Doctor, asked a injured Zenthari, minor, are all human medics like you? Like what? She asked, cleaning a plasma burn on his arm. Armed, alert, Ready for trouble? Daeun smiled. We train for hostile environments. Space is hostile. Other people are often hostile. We adapt. But you're a healer. I'm a soldier who specializes in keeping people alive. Sometimes that means treating injuries. Sometimes it means preventing them. The miner looked confused. How do you prevent injuries? By eliminating the things that cause them, Daeun said, and moved on to the next patient. Admiral Kelneth was still trying to understand human military doctrine. Captain Jiwon, if I may ask, what was your primary objective in this engagement? Rescue civilian populations and neutralize the threat, but you could have negotiated. The Kreks might have accepted compensation for the prisoners. Admiral, let me ask you something. If someone broke into your home and threatened your family, would you negotiate with them or remove the threat? Kelneth thought about this. I would try to find a peaceful solution, and if they said no, if they kept threatening your family while you talked, I suppose I would have to act. That's what we did. We acted. But it was more than just acting, Kelneth realized. The humans had acted with such precision and overwhelming force that they had not just rescued the colonists. They had sent a message across the entire sector that certain behaviors would result in immediate and total destruction. Captain Sulven understood now why his distress call had brought these particular rescuers. His people had hoped for civilized beings who would negotiate and find peaceful solutions. Instead, they had received creatures who treated peace as a goal worth fighting for. The difference was important. On Kara 7, the last of the injured colonists had been treated and the last of the Kreks equipment had been secured. Lieutenant Taehyun gathered his Marines for final sweep of the settlement. Cleanup complete, he reported to Captain Jiwon. Colony is secure, all hostiles eliminated, all friendlies accounted for. Standard post-engagement protocol complete. Copy that, Lieutenant. Good work. Prepare for extraction. But Administrator Peltok had one more question for the human soldiers before they left. Will you stay? Set up a base here? The Kreks might come back. Taehyun looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. They won't come back here. Word will spread about what happened, but if they do... He gestured toward the defensive installations his Marines had set up around the colony perimeter. You'll be ready. Peltok looked at the automated defense turrets, shield generators, and communication arrays the humans had installed. Military equipment that would make the mining colony safer than most fortress worlds. You're giving this to us? Standard procedure. When we protect something, we make sure it stays protected. Back in space, Admiral Kelneth was beginning to understand the scope of human rescue operations. They didn't just save people, they solved the entire problem that had put those people in danger in the first place. Captain Jiwon, he transmitted, what happens now? Now we file reports, repair any damage, and continue our patrol. Fairly routine. And the Kreks? What about them? Will you hunt down the rest of their forces, destroy their bases, invade their home systems? There was that pause again, the one that suggested a human was trying to explain something obvious to someone who didn't quite get it. Admiral, we're not conquerors, we're protectors. The Kreks know now that attacking human-protected populations will result in their destruction. Most of them are smart enough to learn from this lesson. And if they're not smart enough, then they'll provide more lessons for the ones who are. As the human ship prepared to leave Kara 7, Sulven realized something that would change how his people thought about their place in the galaxy. The Valari had always seen themselves as the wise protectors, the civilized ones who kept peace through diplomacy and advanced technology. But there was another kind of protection, the kind that came from being so effective at violence that nobody wanted to test you. The kind that solved problems permanently instead of negotiating temporary solutions. The Deathworlders had brought fire to Kara 7. But it was controlled fire. Purposeful fire. Fire that burned away threats and left safety in its wake. And across the galaxy, predator species were beginning to learn a new truth. Some prey had evolved into something much more dangerous. 3 hours after the shooting stopped, the true meaning of human rescue operations became clear. Captain Sulven watched from his repaired bridge as human engineering teams worked around Kara 7 with the same methodical efficiency they had shown in combat. They were not just fixing damage, they were upgrading everything. "They're installing military-grade shield generators around the colony," reported his tactical officer, "and defensive weapon platforms, and early warning systems." "All of this equipment," Sulven murmured. "It must be worth a fortune. Why are they giving it away?" Captain Jiwan's voice came over the communication channel. "Because protecting something once isn't enough, Captain. You have to make sure it stays protected." Down on the colony, Administrator Peltok walked through the settlement with growing amazement. The humans had not just driven off the Kreks, they had turned his simple mining operation into a fortress that could defend against a small fleet. "This is too much," he told Lieutenant Taehyun. "We're just miners. We can't afford to pay for all this military equipment." Taehyun looked at him with that patient expression humans wore when dealing with people who still didn't understand how, they thought. Who said anything about paying? But this must cost millions of credits. Advanced shield generators, automated defense turrets, military communication arrays. It's surplus equipment from our last upgrade cycle. Better to put it to use than let it sit in storage. Peltok stared at the young human soldier. "Surplus? This is your old equipment?" "Some of it's 2 years old. Ancient by human standards." The why? Administrator realized something that made him feel very small. What humans considered outdated cast-offs was more advanced than the best defensive systems most civilized worlds could afford. Medic Dayun finished treating the last of the injured colonists and began packing her medical supplies. But she left behind enough equipment to stock a small hospital, including surgical tools that could perform operations automatically and medical scanners that could detect diseases before symptoms appeared. "Doctor," asked one of the local medics, "how do we calibrate this equipment?" "Already calibrated for local atmospheric conditions and the species mix here," she replied. "The medical AI will handle most routine cases. If you get something unusual, just contact Earth Medical Command. They'll walk you through it." "You mean we can call Earth for medical advice?" 24-hour consultation service, standard procedure for human-protected populations." The local medic looked at the advanced medical bay that had appeared in their community center. This is better than most core world hospitals." Dayun shrugged. "Humans take healthcare seriously. Hard to protect people if they're dying of preventable diseases." Back in space, Admiral Kelneth was having a very strange conversation with his own government about what humans called standard protection protocols. "Admiral," came the transmission from the Valari home system. "Please confirm your report. Did these humans really install permanent defensive systems around the entire colony?" "Confirmed. Shield generators, weapon platforms, sensor arrays, communication networks. They're turning Kara 7 into one of the most heavily defended positions in the sector." "And they're asking for nothing in return?" "Nothing, sir. They say it's routine procedure." There was a long pause from the Valari government. When the reply came, it sounded confused. "Admiral, we've been studying human military doctrine from their public broadcasts. According to their own information, this level of defensive installation would normally require a formal alliance treaty and yearly payments of several million credits. That's what they charge governments who can afford it, sir. Apparently, mining colonies get the friends and family discount." Captain Jiwan's voice cut into their communication. "Admiral, if I may clarify, human protection doctrine operates on a simple principle. If someone threatens civilians under our protection, we eliminate the threat and make sure it doesn't happen again. The cost of prevention is always less than the cost of repeated rescue operations." Kelneth began to understand. "You're not just helping this one colony. You're establishing a pattern that will protect others." "Correct. Word is already spreading through Krek's communication networks about what happened here. Their raiding operations in this entire sector are shutting down. Because they know you'll respond the same way if they try again. Because they know we'll respond more effectively if they try again. Humans learn from experience, so do our weapon systems." On Kara 7, Engineer Minho was putting the finishing touches on what he called basic defensive upgrades. The mining colony now had defensive systems that could hold off a fleet assault long enough for human reinforcements to arrive. The shield. Generators will recharge automatically using the colony's power grid, he explained to the local maintenance chief. The weapon platforms have smart targeting. They won't shoot at anything that isn't shooting first, and the sensor array will give you 12 hours warning if anyone approaches with hostile intent. 12 hours? Asked the maintenance chief. How is that possible? Quantum entanglement communication with the human early warning network. When sensors here detect a threat, every human ship within 20 light years gets instant notification. The maintenance chief looked at the quantum communication array that had been installed next to their simple mining equipment. That's faster than light communication. The technology to build that costs more than our entire colony. Minho looked confused. It's just a standard comm array. Every human settlement has them. How else would you call for help? By evening, the transformation of Kara 7 was complete. What had been a simple mining colony that morning was now a defended outpost that could serve as a safe haven for civilian ships throughout the region. Captain Sulven met with Captain Jiwan one final time before the human ship departed. I need to ask, he said, why do all this? You rescued the colonists. You defeated the Kreks. Why go further? Jiwan looked at him with an expression that was almost sad. Captain, my people spent thousands of years learning a simple lesson. The cost of fighting a war is always less than the cost of losing one. But there is no war here. This was just a rescue operation. Was it? The Kreks have been raiding civilian settlements across this sector for months, taking slaves, killing resistors, terrorizing entire populations. From our perspective, the war was already happening. We just ended it. Sulven thought about this. By making it too expensive for them to continue, by making it impossible for them to continue, there's a difference. As the Hammer of Soul prepared to leave, Admiral Kelneth sent a final transmission. Captain Jiwan, on behalf of the Valari government, I want to thank you for what you've done here. Just doing our job, Admiral. Your job includes giving away millions of credits worth of military equipment. Our job is protecting civilian populations. Everything else is just details. The human ship began moving away from Kara 7, but Sulven noticed something. Captain, you're not leaving the system. Correct. We're establishing a patrol route. This sector is now under human protection. For how long? Until it doesn't need to be. 3 months later, Sulven received a report that changed how his people thought about galactic politics. Krek's raiding operations had dropped to 0 across 3 entire sectors, not because of treaties or negotiations, but because word had spread through their military hierarchy about the species that treated orbital bombardment as a construction technique and vacuum exposure as a minor inconvenience. The Valari government quietly began studying human military manuals, wondering if their definition of civilization might need some updates. Other species were learning the same lesson. The Zenthari Trade Council started requesting human escort vessels for their merchant ships. The Altarian Republic began negotiating mutual defense agreements. Even the proud Kalani Empire sent diplomatic envoys to discuss cooperation against common threats. They all had the same basic message. We would like to be on the same side as the humans. Because they had learned what Captain Sulven learned at Kara 7. When you called for rescue and hoped for civilized help, you might get the Deathworlders instead, and the Deathworlders brought fire. Controlled, purposeful, absolutely effective fire that burned away threats and left safety in its wake. 6 months later, Captain Jiwan received her next assignment, diplomatic escort duty to the Centauri Summit, where humanity would explain their peaceful intentions to a gathering of nervous galactic powers. Her crew was looking forward to it. Diplomatic missions were always interesting when you were humans trying to convince everyone else that you were the good guys. Even when you were the good guys who had just revolutionized interstellar security by treating warfare as another engineering problem and fear as a valid diplomatic currency. As the Hammer of Soul set course for Centauri, Captain Jiwan updated her mission log. Kara 7 operation complete. Colony secured, threat neutralized, sector stabilized. Proceeding to next assignment. Note for future reference. Other species still seem surprised when we actually solve problems instead of just managing them. Behind them, Kara 7 continued its quiet work of mining asteroids and serving as a safe harbor for civilian traffic. The colonists went about their daily lives under the protection of defensive systems that could hold off a battle fleet.